All right, today we're going to be talking about two shoes. We're going to be talking about the Hoka Mafate X and the Hoka Mafate 5's. For the record, I am not affiliated with Hoka or any other running shoe brand for that matter. I just share reviews on the gear that I use, and so you can be sure that I am unbiased in everything that I say today. With that said, I went down to my local running store, Ogden Running Company, and they helped me pick out a pair of shoes. And they actually recommended the 5's to me, and when I saw the X's, I thought it'd be fun to do a comparison and do kind of every other run in each of these shoes. And so that's what I did for the last couple weeks, and I have about a little over 50 miles in each shoe. So today I want to share my thoughts on each shoe, and hopefully if you're trying to decide between the two or if these are just two options, hopefully I can help you make the decision on whether or not one of these shoes is the right shoe for you. So to start us off, I want to talk about price. Coming in at $185, these shoes are slightly more than average. I think the average trail shoe today is going for somewhere around 150 to 160, so this is pretty close to average, I think. And then these are a more premium shoe. These come in at $225. So this is, in my mind, a premium price for a premium running shoe. With that said, let's talk about sizing. So in terms of sizing, I am a size 9 and I went with a size 9 on the Mafate 5's. When I went into the running store and I was trying them on, they didn't have a size 9 in the Mafate X's, and so I tried a 9.5 and I thought it fit perfectly. Like, it fit the exact same as the 9's in the 5's, and so I didn't really get a chance to compare it to a 9, and so I don't know, if it would have been a better choice, but the 9.5 fit how all 9's have fit in pretty much every other running shoe. So keep that in mind. I guess I can't, like I said, I can't really compare to a 9, and so maybe just understand that you might want to try these on before you buy them. So, and then in terms of the rest of the fit of the shoe, it kind of is a mid to wide toe, and then it's kind of a little bit loose in the heel as well on both of these shoes. And I'll talk a little bit more about the overall fit when I talk about the upper, but in terms of just width, we got kind of a wide on both of these shoes. They're kind of not super wide, but they're roomy in the toe, and then you've got a good secure fit in the midfoot, and then they both go a little bit wide in the heel. Now let's move on to the weight of these shoes. The Mafate 5's come in at 11.7 and the Mafate X's come in at 12.1. Those are both very heavy for running shoes in general. I think the only shoe that I've ever run in that's heavier are the Ultra Olympus 6's. And those were like 12.6 ounces. So they were pretty close to the X's, and then about an ounce heavier than these. And, when you're talking ounces, you don't think that would make that big of a difference, but in my mind, it does. And, while these weren't nearly as clunky as the Ultra Olympus 6's, both of these shoes felt very heavy on my feet, especially compared to the Mount Coast T1's that I've been running in and some On Cloud trail shoes that I've been running in as well. Both of these felt very heavy. Keep that in mind that these are not by any means light trail running shoes. But with that said, let's move on to the next topic, which is the outsole. Both of these shoes have Vibram outsoles. The Mafate X's have kind of like this pizza taco pattern, which a lot of people like. I think it's kind of interesting looking. But the Mafate 5's have a much more aggressive lug pattern. Both of these shoes, given that they are Vibram, I have had fantastic experiences with Vibram in the past. Like when I saw that they both had Vibram, I knew that I was going to like them because of their grip and durability. The grip was fantastic on both of these. I think a lot of it has to do with the way that they've carved out the EVA material, especially on the X's, but a little bit on the 5's as well. Great grip. I will say that I am experiencing a decent amount of wear after 50-ish miles on the X's, especially up here, but that's kind of where I see a lot of wear and tear when I do see wear and tear. So I don't know if it's the it can't be the pattern. I don't know what's going on, but I am experiencing a decent amount of wear here, given the fact that I've only run 50 miles in them. Maybe it's because of the stiffness of the shoe. Maybe it's because of, you know, a variety of other factors, but they're still probably going to get 250 plus miles of use on these shoes, but that's not great given the price. With these, I'm seeing almost nothing. I see a little bit up here, but not. I'm seeing significantly more here. But with that said, like I'm not saying that the lugs are completely shaved down. They're really not. It's just I am seeing wear, and which is abnormal for a Vibram. I've also heard it said Vibram. I'm gonna say Vibram. With a Vibram sole, I usually don't experience a lot of wear. So keep that in mind. Now let's move on to the midsole. We'll start with the X's on this. So the Mafate X's have PIBA foam, I think that's what they're calling it, and then they also have a carbon plate in the foam. And this foam is incredibly comfortable. Like it's very, very comfortable to stand in, to walk in, and to run in many ways. But with the stack height on this shoe, and the stack height on both these shoes is incredibly high. For the Mafate X's, you start with 49 millimeters of cushion in the heel down to 41 millimeters in the forefoot, giving you an 8 millimeter drop. That is an absolute monstrous amount of cushion in the heel and in the forefoot. For those of us that don't use the metric system, that's almost 2 inches of foam in the heel. That is a lot of cushion, and you feel it when you put these shoes on. They're tall, they're comfy, you sink into that foam. And like I said, there is a carbon plate in this, and so when you pick up this shoe and you try and bend it, like, and it has a rebound, like it takes a lot of pressure to bend these, and so this is a very, very rigid shoe. I'll talk more about that a little bit later, but just keep that in mind. You've got a ton of cushion, a carbon plate. The responsiveness of this midsole really wasn't there for me. Every time I tried to go fast, these shoes just didn't quite respond. The comfiness outweighed the responsiveness. Like I heard a Hoka engineer say that these were built for the ultra shuffle, meaning you're not out there looking for speed, you're out there looking to finish. And I think that's pretty accurate for this shoe. Like there's no speed built in here, even though it does have that carbon plate. I think the carbon plate is just to try and save your legs a little bit, giving you some extra spring over the course of 100 miles, however long your ultra run is. So that's where I'm at with the midsole there. So with the Mafate 5's, the heel has a stack height of 44 millimeters down to 36 millimeters, giving you another 8 millimeter drop. This shoe does not have a carbon plate. It does have a plastic plate in it, and then it has dual density foam, meaning I think it's the black is a little bit more forgiving, and then the blue, the light blue, is more rigid. So you've got some soft and some hard combinations there, and it's supposed to give you a better ride. And this shoe, it's still rigid, but not nearly as rigid as the X's. And I think the plastic plate is actually a good thing. I think that was a smart move. I think a lot of people will like that. That same video where I saw the Hoka engineer talking about the Mafate X is being built for the ultra shuffle, like no speed. He described this shoe as built for the person looking for a fast 55K. I would never qualify this shoe as a fast shoe. I think the responsiveness is mediocre, and the overall stability of the shoe, just, you never feel agile when you're running in these shoes. These are not something that I picture myself flying down or up a mountain in to get that fast 55K time. That's never how I would describe these. But you, in both of these shoes, that you roll over everything. And I forgot to talk about the protection in the outsole. You've got a lot of open EVA here, but given the fact that you have almost 2 inches of foam between you and the trail, that's a ton of protection. And I never felt anything on these. You feel a tiny bit on these, on some of the sharpest rocks that stick out highest out of the trail. With these, I never felt anything. And they did a good job cutting out this EVA, as I mentioned, not only for grip, but like when you're running over some unstable terrain or rocky terrain where your foot is likely to roll. The stability comes from these cutouts of the EVA. It gives the shoe the ability to kind of form over the uneven terrain. I don't know what I'm doing with my arm there, but that's just what I envision. It just kind of like, it just absorbs all of the weird different rocks in the dirt that are sticking up that could cause you to roll your ankle. It's like, imagine like a massive truck with huge off-road tires, and then you deflate those tires down so that you can climb. That's what these shoes are, but for your feet. Like, they're like massive deflated tires that absorb every imperfection in the trail, so you don't even feel it, but you don't go fast either. So that's the analogy I'd give there. So I think that kind of sums up everything I wanted to talk about in terms of the midsole on these shoes. So now let's move up to the upper. We'll start with this one again. So the upper on this shoe, fantastic breathability. You've got a decent fit in the forefoot, and in the midfoot you've got a nice fit, and then in the heel things really fall apart. But before I get to the heel, the tongue on this shoe is razor thin. And that becomes a problem given the fact that the heel starts to, it's just too big back there. I tried to do the runner's knot, bringing the laces back to that second hole back here and really cinching it down. But because the tongue is razor thin and short, the razor thin, it was cutting off the circulation to the rest of my foot. And because the tongue is short, after a couple steps into your run, the tongue kind of moves forward ever so slightly, and then the laces are on your sock. The tongue isn't even long enough to cover the lacing if you use the runner's knot. I was very disappointed in the upper here. And in terms of the heel, where the heel cup failed on this shoe was that this shoe, like as I mentioned, is incredibly rigid, so that when you're climbing, like your foot's gonna flex as you climb, and your heel comes up off the ground as you toe off climbing any sort of grade, and your shoe needs to follow your heel. Well, this shoe you can't get a good enough, a secure enough fit for the shoe to follow you, and the shoe is so rigid that it becomes, this is an exaggeration, but it becomes like a flip-flop. Like, your heel completely leaves the bottom of the shoe, and your heel doesn't come out of the shoe, or at least mine didn't, but it just, and the feeling was not, it just wasn't there for me. And I know I'm not alone on this. I highly recommend that you go listen to other people talk about this shoe, but I know I'm not alone in the lack of security here in the heel in this shoe. And it's just, like, I never experienced any hot spots, which is interesting, but it's just, I never felt great in this shoe. I never felt like I could go fast up a hill. I never felt like I could come down fast because of the lack of security. And maybe this shoe is built for a flat, slow 100-miler. If that's the case, then that's probably a pretty good fit. But the upper is really where I have issues, and it's because of the tongue and the heel. The rest of it, good breathability, good protection, we're okay. Moving on to the 5's. The 5's have great breathability, again, great protection all the way around, but they have the same issue with a short and thin tongue. Like, huge oversight, in my opinion. Again, I had a really hard time. I had a good fit in the forefoot and in the midfoot, but I had a hard time getting a secure fit in the heel again. But this one wasn't the back of the heel. I actually never felt my heel coming out of the shoe or moving up at all. This one, it just felt it felt like a cavern inside the shoe. It felt like, I've had this problem on other shoes where the lacing system cinches it around the top of your heel, or around the top of your ankle, like right below your ankle bone, but above your heel. It's just like, it's just hugging right there. But below that, where your heel actually sits in the shoe, it just felt too big. And it wasn't nearly as big as a problem as it was with the X's, but it was a disappointing part of this shoe. And I know I'm not alone on this one either. I guess a lot of people are saying that the problem is that this black soft material, it's allowing too much compression, and so your heel has too much movement down in there when you're coming down, or just anytime you're having any sort of heel impact, pretty much every stride. So that's where I'm at. Once again, they didn't fail really anywhere except for the lacing system and the heel cup. Before I move on to my final thoughts, and I like to always weigh in on the look and feel. If you've watched any of my reviews before, you know I've been not a huge fan of Hoka until I tried their Clifton 10s, which I really liked, so I thought I'd give these a try. I think their Hokas are generally hideous. These are boats on your feet. They are absolutely gigantic. I don't know how you could make the shoe look better given the fact of how big they are. Just monstrous shoes. And so I'll give them a pass on that. I think, you know, the colors are fine. I actually think these shoes look pretty cool. These ones, they just look like boats when you put them on. But, you know, that's what you get if you want the high cushion shoes. You gotta wear boats on your feet. But now let's move on to my overall thoughts and my summary on these shoes. We'll start with this one. I think this was a big fail. I feel like the market for these are the people that are running 100-milers that can't be steep because you need that heel security, and you can't care about your time because they're just not going to respond. But if you have knee issues, back issues, hip issues, and you need this extra cushion, this is a very comfortable ride. And you'd probably be fine even on some steep climbs if you're not really going out there for speed. So this is a slow person's shoe that just wants a comfy ride and a very protected ride. And I really think you'll be okay in terms of durability on the Vibram outsole. There's just a little bit of wear. I'm sure it'll be fine. But so extremely slow shoe, but comfortable. So take that for what it's worth. And then with this shoe, I think they did a good job with the cushioning. I do agree that there's a little bit too much give or something here in the heel because I just didn't feel super secure. And if you're trying to do a fast 55K, you want security. You want to feel secure when you're bombing down the hills and climbing really fast, and they just didn't quite get there for me. But outside of that, if they could dial in the heel, I could even deal with the thin tongue if I could just get a secure fit without having to crank down the laces, because it's when I crank down the laces that it cuts off the circulation and then we have issues. So anyways, I don't hate these. They won't be my go-to. I'm not going to reach for either of these shoes in terms of like, oh, I'm going for a big run or a fast run or a long run, or like this might be like a recovery day shoe, and I don't even know, like it's just like a average everyday shoe. At the end of the day, if you've watched any of my reviews before, you know what I'm looking for is a shoe that is a natural extension of my foot, and neither of these shoes check that box. And that's a huge red flag to me, because when you're out on a trail, the last thing you want to do is think about your shoes. And I was constantly thinking about these shoes because they bothered me in some way. And at $225, I can't recommend this shoe at that price. And at $185, maybe. I mean, I would highly recommend going into the store, and if they have a treadmill, running on the treadmill and making sure that you feel like your heel is secure in these. Otherwise, you might be a little bit disappointed. So anyways, it's kind of a bummer. I don't like doing shoe reviews and having them being super negative. These have their place, and it's for the slow runner. And if that's you, that's great. And maybe you'll like these. They're heavy. They're not fast. Yeah, you probably know already. If this shoe's for you, you probably know. This shoe, I have a really hard time placing for the audience because, you know, this had potential to be a really good shoe. I like the plastic plate. I like the midsole, the outsole. It's just the heel cup or the heel contour, I think some people call it that. So anyways, I really hope that this review and this comparison was helpful. If it was, I hope you'll stick around, and I'll catch you in another video.